really thinking about you a lot, and we hope that you're doing better and better each day. And we're excited to read some stories to you. So here you go. The first one is The Wolf and the Kid.
Yo, there was once this little kid whose growing horns making him think he was a grown-up billy goat and able to take care of himself. So one evening, when the flock started home from the pasture, his mother called. The kid paid no heed and kept right on nibbling the tender grass. A little later, he was really excited. He was all alone. The sun was sinking. Long shadows came creeping over the ground. A little chilly little wind came creeping with them, making scary noises in the grass. The kid shivering, and he thought of the terrible wolf. Then he started wildly over the field, bleating for his mother. But, not halfway near a clump of trees, there was the wolf. Ah, the wolf! The kid knew that the little hope of him. Please, Mr. Wolf, he said, trembling, I know you're going to eat me, but first, please, pipe me in a tune, for I want to dance and be merry as long as I can. The wolf liked the idea of the little music before eating. So he struck up a merry tune, and the kid leaped and frisked gaily. Gaily. Meanwhile, the flock was moving slowly homeward. In the still evening air, the wolf's pipe carried far. The shepherd dogs picked up their ears. They recognized the song and wolf singing before a feast. And in a moment, they were racing back to the pasture. The wolf's song ended suddenly, and he ran the dogs and the heels, and he called himself a fool for turning piper to please a kid, when he should have stuck with his butcher's trade. The moral of the story is, do not let anything turn you from your purpose. Story number 2, The Tortoise and the Duck. The tortoise and the duck, carries a house on his back. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot leave home. They say that Juniper punished him so because he was such a lazy at home that he would not even go to Juniper's wedding, even when especially invited. After many years, the tortoise began to wish he had gone to that wedding. When he saw that how gaily the birds flew, about how the hare and the chipmunk and all the other animals ran nimbly by, always eager to see everything there was to be seen, the tortoise felt very sad and discontented. He wanted to see the world too. And there he was, with a little house on his back and little short legs that he could hardly drag him along. One day, he met a pair of ducks and told them all his troubles. He can help you see the world, said the ducks. Take hold of this stick with your teeth, and he will carry you far in the air where you can see the whole countryside. But keep quiet, or you will be sorry. The tortoise was very glad indeed. He seized the stick firmly with his teeth, and the two ducks took him. It took hold of it, one at each end, and away they sailed upwards to the clouds. Just then, a crow flew by. He was very much astonished at the strange sight, and cried, "This must surely be the king's tortoise." "Why, certainly," began the tortoise. But as he opened his mouth to say these foolish words, he lost his hold on the stick, and down he fell on the ground, where he was dashed to pieces on the rocks. The moral of this story is, foolish curiosity and vanity often lead to misfortune. The Young Crab
and his mother. Why in the world do you walk sideways like that? Said a mother crab to her son. You should always walk straight forward with your toes turned out. Show me how to walk, mother dear, answered the little crab obediently. I want to learn. So the old crab tried and tried to walk straight forward, but she could walk sideways only, like her son. And when she wanted to turn her toes out, she tripped and fell on her nose. The moral of the story: do not tell others how to act unless you can set a good example. Patrick, have a great night.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, I'm Heather.
Patrick, it's Heather. What's your last name?
Cunningham.
Oh.
Anyways, hi, Patrick. Hi, Patrick. I miss you. This is really awkward. I don't know why, but I really miss you, and I really hope that you're doing well and that you're doing better. And I hope that we have you with us again soon. So, 1 second.
It's Michael, it's not going off of your picture. It loves you. Okay, go ahead.
Try spotlighting video.
There.
There we
Perfect.
go.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so I will be reading 3 stories. All right, so the first one is The Frogs and the Ox. An ox came down to a reedy pool to drink. As he splashed heavily into the water, he crushed a young frog into the mud. The old frog soon missed the little frog and asked his brothers and sisters what had become of him. A great big monster, said one of them, stepped on little brother with one of his huge feet. Big was he, said the old frog, puffing herself up. Was he as big as this? Oh, much bigger, they cried. The frog puffed up still more. He could not have been bigger than this, she said. But the little frogs all declared that the monster was much, much bigger, and the old frog kept puffing herself out more and more until all at once she burst. The next story we'll be reading is called Belling the Cat. The mice once called a meeting to decide on a plan to free themselves of their enemy, the cat. At least they wished to find some way of knowing when she was coming so they might have time to run away. Indeed, something had to be done, for they lived in such constant fear of her claws that they hardly dared stir from their dens by night or day. Many plans were discussed, but none of them was thought good enough. At last, a very young mouse got up and said, I have a plan that seems very simple, but I know it will be successful. All we have to do is hang a bell about the cat's neck. When we hear the bell ringing, we will know immediately that our enemy is coming. All the mice were much surprised that they had not thought of such a good plan before. But in the midst of rejoicing over their good fortune, an old mouse arose and said, I will say that the plan of the young mouse is very good. But let me ask one question. Who will bell the cat? And the last story we'll be reading is The Eagle and the Jackdaw. An eagle, swooping down on powerful wings, seized a lamb in her talons and made off with it to her nest. A jackdaw saw the deed, and his silly head was filled with the idea that he was big and strong enough to do as the eagle had done. So with much rustling of feathers and a fierce air, he came down swiftly on the back of a large ram. But when he tried to rise again, he found that he could not get away, for his claws were tangled in the wool. And so far was he from carrying away the ram, that the ram hardly noticed he was there. The shepherd saw the fluttering jackdaw and at once guessed what had happened. Running up, he caught the bird and clipped its wings. That evening, he gave the jackdaw to his children. What a funny bird this is, they said, laughing. What do you call it, father? That is a jackdaw, my children. But if you should ask him, he would say he is an eagle. And that's everything from me.
Hey Patrick, it's Noelle. My, it has been quite a year, hasn't it? Could have been a lot better, but you know, here we are. And for the record, the last scene we did together. So I expect a do-over. Just saying. We miss you a lot. It'll be good to have you back in class, man. It'll be good to have everything back to normal. But in the meantime, you get 3 stories. Congratulations. The first one is called The Boy and the Filberts. A boy was given permission to put his hand into a pitcher and get some filberts. But he took such a great fistful that he could not draw his hand out again. There he stood, unwilling to give up a single filbert, and yet unable to get them all out at once. Vexed and disappointed, he began to cry. "My boy," said his mother, "be satisfied with half the nuts you have taken, and you will easily get your hand out. And then perhaps you can have some more filberts another time." The second story is called Hercules and the Wagoner. A farmer was driving his wagon along a wiry road after a heavy rain. The horses could hardly drag the load through the deep mud, and at last came to a standstill when one of the wheels sank up to the hub in the mud. The farmer climbed down from his seat and stood beside the wagon looking at it, but without making the least bit of effort to get it out of that rut. All he did was to curse his bad luck and call loudly to Hercules to come to his aid. Then, it is said, Hercules himself did surely appear, saying, "Put your shoulder on the wheel, man, and urge your horses on. Do you think you can move the wagon simply by looking at it and whining about it? Hercules will not help unless you make some effort to help yourself." And when the farmer put his shoulder to the wheel and urged on the horses, the wagon moved very readily, and soon the farmer was riding along in great content and with a good lesson learned. The last story is called The Kid and the Wolf. A frisky young kid had been left by the herdsman on the thatched roof of a sheep shelter to keep him out of harm's way. The kid was browsing near the edge of the roof when he spied a wolf and began to jeer at him, making faces and abusing him to his heart's content. "I hear you," said the wolf, "and I haven't the least grudge against you for what you say or do. When you are up there, it is the wolf talking, and not you." That's all, buddy. Hope you get better soon. We love you.
Hi, Patrick. It's me, and I know you're excited to hear me. I want to start off by saying that I love you very much. And I'm so sorry that what you have gone through. But I'm excited to see you recover, and I'm excited to see you again, and to hold and to kiss you on the scene. Maybe on the side. I have 2 stories for you, so I'm gonna make them good. The first one's called The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. A town mouse once visited a relative who lived in the country. For lunch, the country mouse served wheat stalks, roots, and acorns, with a dash of cold water for drink. The town mouse ate very sparingly, nibbling a little of this and a little of that, and by her manner making it very plain that she ate the simple food, only to be polite. After the meal, the friends had a long talk, or rather, the town mouse talked about her life in the city, while the country mouse listened. They then went to bed in a cozy nest in the hedgerow and slept in a quiet and comfort until morning. In her sleep, the country mouse dreamed she was a town mouse with all the luxuries and delights of a city life that her friend had described for her. So the next day, when the town mouse asked the country mouse to go home with her to the city, she gladly said yes. When they reached the mansion in which the town mouse lived, they found on the table in the dining room the leavings of a very fine banquet. There were sweetmeats and jellies, pastries, delicious cheeses indeed, the most tempting foods that a mouse can imagine. But just as the country mouse was about to nibble a dainty bit of pastry, she heard a cat meow loudly and scratch at the door. In great fear, the mice scurried to a hiding place, where they lay quiet still for a long time, hardly daring to breathe. When at last they ventured back to the feast, the door opened suddenly, and in came in the servants to clean the table, followed by the house dog. The country mouse stopped in the town mouse's den only long enough to pick up her carpet bag and umbrella. "You may have luxuries and dainties that I have not," she said as she hurried away, "but I prefer my plain food and simple life in the country with the peace and security that go with it." The second story is called The Fox and the Grapes. A fox one day spied a beautiful bunch of ripe grapes hanging from a vine trained along the branches of a tree. The grapes seemed ready to burst with juice, and the fox's mouth watered as he gazed longingly at them. The bunch hung from a high branch, and the fox had to jump for it. The first time he jumped, he missed it by a long way, so he walked off a short distance and took a running leap at it, only to fall short once more. Again and again he tried, but in vain, no avail. Now he sat down and looked at the grapes in disgust. "What a fool I am," he said. "Here I am wearing myself out to get a bunch of sour grapes that are not worth gaping for." And off he walked, very, very scornfully. I love you, buddy. I can't wait to see you again.
Hey, Patrick. It's me, Ed Gasson, Bambi, the guy with the big old chain. Out to see you soon, man. I know we're gonna see you real soon too. Good job on recovering. I know you got it in you. All right. First story is The Bundle of Sticks. A certain father had a family of sons who were forever quarreling among themselves. No words he could say did the least good. So he cast about in his mind for some very striking example that should make them see the discord would lead them to misfortune. One day when the quarreling had been much more violent than usual, and each of the sons were moping in a surly manner, he asked one of them to bring up a bundle of sticks. Then handing the bundle to each of his sons, in turn, he told them to try to break it. But although each one tried his best, but none was able to do so. The father then untied the bundle and gave the sticks to his sons to break one by one. This they did very easily. "My sons," said the father, "do you not see how certain it is that you agree with each? It will be impossible for your enemies to injure you. But if you are divided among yourselves, you will be no stronger than a single stick in that bundle." The Wolf and the Crane. A wolf had been feasting too greedily, and a bone had struck crosswise in his throat. He could get it neither up nor down, and of course he could not eat a thing. Naturally, that was an awful state of affairs for a greedy wolf. So away he turned to the crane. He was sure that she, with her long neck and bill, would easily be able to reach the bone and pull it out. "I will reward you very handsomely," said the wolf, "if you pull out the bone out of me." The crane, as you can imagine, was very uneasy about putting her head in a wolf's throat. But she was gasping in nature. So she did what the wolf asked her to do. When the wolf felt that the bone was gone, he started to walk away. "But what about my reward?" called the crane anxiously. "What?" snarled the wolf, whirling around. "Haven't you got it? Isn't it enough that I let you take care of your head out of my mouth without snapping it off?" The oxen and the wheels. A pair of oxen were drawing a heavily loaded wagon along a merry country road. They had to use all their strength to pull the wagon, but they did not complain. The wheels of the wagon were a different sort. Though the task they had to do was very light compared with that of the oxen, they creaked and groaned at every turn. The poor oxen, pulling with all their might to draw the wagon through the deep mud, had their ears filled with the loud complaining of the wheels. And this, you may well know, made sure their work so much the harder to endure. Silence, the oxen cried out of patience. What have you wheels to complain about so loudly? We are drawing all the weight, not you, and we are keeping still about it besides. That's all the stories that I got for you, Patrick. If you want more stories, I'll see you when you get back to class. Love you, man.
Hey, Patrick, this is Jai, man. So sorry that you're going through this. I can only imagine what you're going through, but I know you're fighting and I know you're going to recover soon. Sending you a big hug. My prayers are with you, and can't wait to have you in class, man. It's definitely not the same without you. So here we go. I got 3 stories for you. I hope you enjoy them. The first one is called The Lion and the Mouse. And it says, a lion lay asleep in the forest, his great head resting on his paws. A timid little mouse came upon him unexpectedly, and in her fright and haste to get away, ran across the lion's nose. Roused from his nap, the lion laid his huge paw angrily on the tiny creature to kill her. Spare me, begged the poor mouse. Please let me go, and someday I will surely repay you. The lion was much amused to think that a mouse could ever help him, but he was generous and finally let the mouse go. Some days later, while stalking his prey in the forest, the lion was caught in the toils of a hunter's net. Unable to free himself, he filled the forest with his angry roaring. The mouse knew the voice and quickly found the lion struggling in the net. Running to one of the great ropes that bound him, she knotted until it parted, and soon the lion was free. You laughed when I said I would repay you, said the mouse. Now you see that even a mouse can help a lion. The shepherd boy and the wolf. The boy that cried wolf. A shepherd boy tended his master's sheep near a dark forest not far from the village. Soon he found life in the pasture very dull. All he could do to amuse himself was to talk to his dog or play on his shepherd's pipe. One day, as he sat watching the sheep in the quiet forest and thinking what he would do and thinking what he should do to see, one day as he sat watching the sheep in the quiet forest and thinking what he would do should he see a wolf, he thought of a plan to amuse himself. His master had told him to call for help should a wolf attack the flock, and the villagers would drive it away. So now, though he had not seen anything that even looked like a wolf, he ran towards the village shouting at the top of his voice, "Wolf! Wolf!" As he expected, the villagers who heard the cry dropped their work and ran in great excitement to the pasture. But when they got there, they found the boy doubled up with laughter at the trick he had played on them. A few days later, the shepherd boy again shouted, "Wolf! Wolf!" Again, the villagers ran to help him, only to be laughed at again. And then one evening, as the sun was setting behind the forest and the shadows were creeping out over the pasture, a wolf really did spring from the underbrush and fell upon the sheep. In terror, the boy ran towards the village shouting, "Wolf! Wolf!" But though the villagers heard the cry, they did not run to help him as they did before. "He cannot fool us again," they said. The wolf killed a great many of the boy's sheep and then slipped away into the forest. Ah, this little guy. The gnat in the bowl. A gnat flew over the meadow with much buzzing for so small a creature and settled on the tip of one of the horns one of the horns of the bull. After he had rested a short time, he made ready to fly away. But before he left, he begged the bull's pardon for having used his horn for a resting place. "You must be very glad to have me go now," he said. "It's all the same to me," replied the bull. "I did not even know you were there." There you go, man. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon in class. Take care, brother. We love you.
Hey, I hope I'm unmuted. Yes, I am. All right, it's Sue, Patrick. I hope you are doing so well right now, and I hope that yeah, these videos find you entertained and dying to come back to class because we're we're just such a fun bunch here. Anyway, we miss you so much. Don't know if you heard about the new addition we got to the studio, but it is a gigantic knight and its name is Sir Patrick, so hey, you gotta come back and see that. So here we go. The Plane Tree. Two travelers walking in the noonday sun sought the shade of a wide spreading tree to rest. As they lay looking up among the pleasant leaves, they saw that it was a plane tree. "Oh, how useless is this plane," said one of them. "It bears no fruit whatever and only serves to litter the ground with leaves." "Oh, ungrateful creatures," said the voice from a plane tree. "You lie here in my cooling shade, and yet you say I am useless? Thus, ungrateful Jupiter, do men receive their blessings." The Farmer and the Stork. A stork of a very simple and trusting nature had been asked by a gay party of cranes to visit a field that had been newly planted. But the party ended dismally with all the birds entangled in the mesh of the farmer's net. That was the birds, by the way. The stork begged the farmer to spare him. Please, let me go," he pleaded. "I belong to the stork family, who you know are honest birds of a good character. Besides, I did not know the cranes were going to steal." "Oh, well, you may be a very good bird," answered the farmer, "but I caught you with the thieving cranes, and you will have to share the same punishment as them. Just be careful who you hang around because you might get caught up and, you have to pay the crime and do the time." The sheep and the pig. Now, for this one, Patrick, you're probably going to want to see this. So hopefully you get to see this a little bit later. This is not a sheep and this is not a pig. It's two lions, or I don't know what they are, but it's like a cheetah maybe and like a snow leopard or something. So anyway, one has spots and one doesn't. We're going to say this is the sheep, the brown one, and the pig, let's trade them. This is the sheep because he's white, and this is the pig because he's almost pink, but he's brown. Okay, hold on. One day, the shepherd discovered a fat pig in the meadow, where his sheep, that was, sorry. This one is the sheep because it's white. Okay, one day a shepherd discovered a fat pig in the meadow where his sheep were pasturing. Oh. He very quickly captured the poker, which squealed at the top of his voice. At the moment the shepherd laid his hands on it, He would have thought to hear the loud squealing the pig was being very cruelly hurt, but in spite of the squeals and struggles to escape, the shepherd, he tucked his prize under his arm. That was the pig. And he started to the butchers in the marketplace. The sheep in the pasture were much astonished. Eyes really big. They were much astonished and amused at the pig's behavior and followed the shepherd and his charge to the pasture gate. What makes you squeal like that? Bah, asked the sheep. The shepherd often catches and carries one of us. Ooh, that's the pig. The shepherd, this is Miss Piggy. I don't know how she sounds. The shepherd often catches and carries one of us off, but we should feel very much ashamed to make such a terrible fuss about it like you do. That's all very well, replied the pig with a squeal and a frantic kick. When he catches you, he's only after your wool. Bad. Yeah, but he wants my bacon! Okay. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story of the sheep and the pig, who are two tigers. Okay, anyway. Bye, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. This is Jennifer. I'm trying to, wait. Okay, I got it. So, I hear that you're doing spine surgeries now, which is probably better than brain stuff. So congratulations on that. And hopefully you'll be able to hear this many, many times while you wait in a hospital, because hospitals are a matter of waiting. So, all right. My first story, The Travelers and the Purse. Two men were traveling in company along the road, and one of them picked up a well-filled purse. "How lucky I am," he said. "I have found a purse. Judging by its weight, it must be full of gold." "Do not say I have found a purse," said his companion. "Say rather, we have found a purse, and how lucky are we. Travelers ought to share alike the fortunes and misfortunes of the road." "No, no," said the other angrily. "I found it, and I'm going to keep it." Just then they heard a shout of "Stop! Thief!" and looking around saw a mob of people coming with clubs down the road. The man who had found the purse fell into a panic. "We are lost if we find the purse on us," he cried. "No, no," replied the other. "You would not say we before, so now stick to your I. Say, I am lost." And the moral is, we cannot expect anyone to share our misfortunes unless we are also willing to share our good fortune as well. The second story is The Frogs Who Wished for a King, which is several pages down for some strange reason. Found it. Okay. The frogs were tired of governing themselves. They had so much freedom that it had spoiled them, and they did nothing but sit around croaking in a bored manner and wishing for a government that could entertain them with the pomp and display of royalty, and rule them in the way that made them know they were being ruled. No milk and water government for them, they declared. They want fascism. So they sent a petition to Juniper and asked for a king. Juniper is the new name for Jupiter, the king of the gods. Jupiter saw what simple and foolish creatures they were. But to keep them quiet and make them think they had a king, he threw them a huge log which fell into the water with a great splash. The frogs hid themselves among the reeds and grasses, thinking the new king had to be a fearful giant. But they soon discovered how tame and peaceful King Log was. In the short time, the younger frogs were using him as a diving platform, while the older frogs made him a meeting place where they complained loudly to Jupiter about the government. To teach the frogs a lesson, the ruler of the gods now sent a crane to be the king of Frogland. The crane proved to be a very different sort of king from old King Log. He gobbled up the poor frogs left and right, and soon they saw what fools they had been. In mournful croaks, they begged Jupiter to take away the cruel tyrant before they should all be destroyed. How now, cried Jupiter, are you not yet content? You have what you asked for, and so you only have yourselves to blame for your own misfortunes. The moral here is before you can better your conditions, before you seek to change. I don't know if I agree with that moral. I think it's more, maybe don't ask for fascism, and if you have a chill god and a chill king, stick with the chill king. But self-governance is also pretty cool. But you know what? I'm not a frog, so everyone has different standards. I think I only had two. Do I have a third one?
Does they only have two stories? I can go, I guess, if no one's gonna answer. Hi, Patrick. It's Grace Park. I miss you a lot, and I love you. I wish I could see your beautiful face. But I'm sure it's safer for you to be where you are and for us to stay away from you. So we're sending a lot of love and good energy, and I hope that we all get to see you soon. I have 3 stories for you today. I don't really have a voice today, so I'll try to breathe a lot. It might take me a while. Okay. My first story, is this working? Is The Owl and the Grasshopper. The owl always takes her sleep during the day. Then, after sundown, when the rosy light fades from the sky and the shadows rise slowly through the wood, out she comes, ruffling and blinking from the old hollow tree. Now her weird whoo, 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 whoo echoes through the quiet wood, and she begins her hunt for the bugs and beetles, frogs and mice she likes so well to eat. Now there was a certain old owl who had become very cross and hard to please as she grew older, especially if anything disturbed her daily slumbers. One warm summer afternoon, as she dozed away in her den in the old oak tree, a grasshopper nearby began a joyous but very raspy song. Out popped the old owl's head from the opening in the tree that served both for door and for window. "Get away from here, sir," she said to the grasshopper. "Have you no manners? You should at least respect my age and leave me to sleep in quiet." But the grasshopper answered saucily that he had as much right to his place in the sun as the owl had to her place in the old oak. Then he struck up a louder and still more rasping tune. The wise old owl knew quite well that it would do no good to argue with the grasshopper, nor with anyone else for that matter. Besides, her eyes were not sharp enough by day to permit her to punish the grasshopper as he deserved. So she laid aside all hard words and spoke very kindly to him. "Well, sir," she said, "if I must stay awake, I am going to settle down, right down to enjoy your singing. Now that I think of it, I have a wonderful wine here sent me from Olympus, of which I am told Apollo drinks before he sings to the high gods. Please, come up and taste this delicious drink with me. I know it will make you sing like Apollo himself." The foolish grasshopper was taken in by the owl's flattering words. Up he jumped to the owl's den, but as soon as he was near enough, so the old owl could see him clearly, she pounced upon him and ate him up. Well, that was kind of scary. The next story is The Wolf and His Shadow. A wolf left his lair one evening in fine spirits and an excellent appetite. He ran, the setting sun cast his shadow far out on the ground, and it looked as if the wolf were 100 times bigger than he really was. Why, exclaimed the wolf proudly, see how big I am. Fancy me running away from a puny lion. I'll show him who is fit to be king, he or I. Just then, an immense shadow blotted him out entirely, and in the next instant, a lion struck him down with a single blow. I think I changed my accent at the end of that story. Okay, last story. The Oak and the Reeds. Oh, this will be my wise, old Asian voice. A giant oak stood near a brook in which grew some slender reeds. When the wind blew, the great oak stood proud and upright, with its 100 arms uplifted to the sky. But the reeds bowed low in the wind and sang a sad and mournful song. You have reason to complain, said the oak. The slightest breeze that ruffles the surface of the water makes you bow your heads, while I, the mighty oak, stand upright and firm before the howling tempest. Do not worry about us, replied the reeds. The winds do not harm us. We bow before them so that we do not break. You, in all your pride and strength, have so far resisted their blows, but the end is coming. As the reeds spoke, a great hurricane rushed out of the north. The oak stood proudly and fought against the storm, while the yielding reeds bowed low. The wind redoubled in fury, and all at once the great tree fell, torn by the roots, and lay among the pitying reeds. And that's all I have, and I love you.
There we go. There we go. I'm full head. Hey, bud. Been about half a year. Wow. Yeah. We started this class together, and we still have a while to go before we're ready to leave this class. So, seeing you then, man. I have 4 stories. Lucky me. I don't know how lucky that is for you, but all right. So the first story is called The Rat and the Elephant. A rat was traveling along the King's Highway. He was a very proud rat, considering his small size and bad reputation all rats have. As Mr. Rat walked along, he kept mostly to the ditch. He noticed a great commotion up the road. And soon, a grand procession came in view. It was the king's retinue. The king rode on a huge elephant, adorned with the most gracious trappings. With the king in his luxurious hogwalk were the royal dog and cat. A great crowd of people followed the procession. They were so taken up with the admiration of the elephant that the rat was not noticed. His pride was hurt. "What fools!" he cried. "Look at me, and you will soon forget the clumsy elephant. Is it his great size makes your eyes pop out, or his wrinkled hide? Why? I have eyes and ears and as many legs as he. I'm just as much of importance, but just as the royal cat spied him. And the next instant, the rat knew he was not quite so important as an elephant." There we go.
Is it working?
It is not. Yeah. All right, the next story I have is called The Boys and the Frogs. Some frogs were playing one day at the edge of the pond, which lived a family of frogs. The boys amused themselves by throwing stones into the pond, as to make them skip on top of the water. The stones were flying very thick and very fast, and the boys were enjoying themselves very much. But the poor frogs in the pond were trembling with fear. At last, one of the frogs, the oldest and bravest, put his head out of the water and said, "Oh, please, dear children, stop your cruel play. Though it may be fun for you, it means death to us." Yeah, short story. All right. This next one is going to be The Crow and the Pitcher. In a spell of dry weather, when the birds could find very little to drink, the thirsty crow found a pitcher with little water in it. But the pitcher was high and had a narrow neck, and no matter how he tried, the crow could not reach the water. So the poor thing felt as if he must die of thirst. And then an idea came to him. Picking up some small pebbles, he dropped them into the pitcher one by one. With each pebble, the water rose a little higher, until at last it was near so enough he could drink. All right. Smart birds. And finally, my last story is called The Ants and the Grasshopper. All right. One bright day in late autumn, a family of ants were bustling about with the warm sunshine, drying out the grain they had stored up during the summer, when a starving grasshopper, his fiddle under his arm, came up and humbly begged for a bite to eat. "What?" cried the ants in surprise. "Haven't you stored anything away for the winter? What in the world were you doing all last summer?" "I didn't have time to store up any food," whined the grasshopper. "I was so busy making music before that before I knew it, summer was gone." The ants shrugged their shoulders in disgust. "Making music? Were you?" they cried. "Very well, now dance." And then they turned their backs on the grasshopper and went on with their work. And that was my last story, Patrick. Like I said, we still got a ways to go in this class, so get better, come back, and we could see you again, buddy.
Hi, Patrick. I know you probably don't remember me. I'm Brad Martinez. I'm from the Wednesday night class. I know you've fallen on some hard times, but just know that you have a lot of people thinking about you and a lot of people praying for you. And with positivity and believing that you can get better, you will. Just know that. And with that, I got 3 stories for you, and I hope these lift your spirits a little bit. The first story I have is a raven and a swan. A raven, which you know is as black as coal, was envious of the swan because her feathers were as white as the purest snow. The foolish bird got the idea that if he lived like the swan, swimming and diving all day long and eating the weeds and plants that grow in the water, his feathers would turn white like the swan's. So he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and the marshes. But though he washed and washed and washed all day long, almost drowning himself at it, his feathers remained as black as ever. And as the water weeds he ate did not agree with him, he got thinner and thinner and thinner until at last he died. The moral of the story is a change of habits will not alter nature. All right. Next story, the 2 goats. 2 goats frisking gaily on the rocky steeps of a mountain valley chanced to meet, one on each side of a deep chasm through which poured a mighty mountain torrent. The trunk of a fallen tree formed the only means of crossing the chasm, and on this, not even 2 squirrels could have passed each other in safety. The narrow path would have made the bravest tremble. Not so for our goats, though. Their pride would not permit either to stand aside from the other. One set her foot on the log. The other did likewise. In the middle, they met horn to horn. Neither would give way, and so they both fell to be swept away by the roaring torrent below. I don't know why mine all end in death. I don't know. The moral is, it is better to yield than to come to misfortune through stubbornness. I could use that moral myself. Okay, my last story is the lion and the gnat. "Away with you, vile insect!" said a lion angrily to a gnat that was buzzing around his head. But the gnat was not in the least disturbed. "Do you think," he said spitefully to the lion, "that I am afraid of you because they call you a king?" The next instant, he flew at the lion and stung him sharply on the nose. Mad with rage, the lion struck out fiercely, tearing himself with his claws. Again and again, the gnat stung the lion, who now was roaring terribly. At last, worn out with rage and covered with wounds that his own teeth and claws had made, the lion gave up the fight. The gnat buzzed away to tell the whole world about his victory, but instead, he flew straight into a spider's web. And there, he who had defeated the king of beasts came to a miserable end, the prey of a tiny, itty-bitty little spider. The moral of this story, Patrick, is the least of our enemies is often the most to be feared. Pride over success should not throw us off our guard. That's all for me, Patrick. I hope you feel better. Hope these stories help you feel better. And when you get back, I fully expect to get a critique from you on my storytelling skills. Good luck with everything, man. I'm praying for you. I know we all are. Good night.
Patrick. It's Patrick. Same thing. Get better. We all miss you. We all care for you. Hopefully these 40+ children's stories prove that. I too have 3 stories to read to you. The first one is the peacock. The peacock, they say, did not at first have beautiful feathers in which he now takes so much pride. Juno, whose favorite he was, granted him one day when he begged for a train of feathers to distinguish him from the other birds. Then, decked in his finery, gleaming with emerald, gold, purple, and azure, he strutted proudly among the birds. All regarded him with envy. Even the most beautiful pheasant could see that his beauty was surpassed. Presently, the peacock saw an eagle soaring high up in the blue sky and felt a desire to fly, as he had been accustomed to. Lifting his wings, he tried to rise from the ground, but the weight of his magnificent train held him down. Instead of flying up to greet the first rays of the morning sun or bathe in the rosy light among the floating clouds in the sunset, he would have to walk the ground more encumbered and oppressed than any common barnyard foal. Next, I have the mice and the weasels. The weasels and the mice were always up in arms against each other. In every battle, the weasels carried off the victory, as well as a large number of the mice, which they ate for dinner the next day, as we all do. In despair, the mice called a council, and there it was decided that the mouse army has always been beaten because it had no leaders. So a large number of generals and commanders were appointed from among the most eminent mice. To distinguish themselves from the soldiers in the ranks, the new leaders proudly bound on their heads lofty crests and ornaments of feathers or straw. Then after long preparation of mouse army and all of the arts of war, they sent a challenge to the weasels. The weasels accepted the challenge with eagerness, for they were always ready for a fight when a meal was in sight. They immediately attacked the mouse army in large numbers. Soon the mouse line gave way before the attack, and the whole army fled for cover. The privates easily squeezed into their holes, that's what she said, but the mouse leaders could not squeeze through the narrow openings because of their headdresses. Not one escaped the teeth of hungry weasels. And then finally, we have the wolf and the lean dog. A wolf prowling near a village one evening met a dog. It happened to be a very lean and bony dog, and Master Wolf would have turned up his nose at such meager fare, but he had not been more hungry than usual. So he began to edge toward the dog, while the dog backed away. "Let me remind you, your lordship," said the dog, his words interrupted now and then as he dodged a snap of the wolf's teeth, "how unpleasant it would be to eat me now. Look at my ribs. I am nothing but skin and bone. But let me tell you something in private. In a few days, my master will give you a wedding feast for only his daughter. You can guess how fine and fat I will grow from the scraps of the table. Then, that is the time to eat me." The wolf could not help thinking how nice it would to have a fine, fat dog to eat instead of the scrawny object before him. So he went, pulling in his belt and promising to return. Some days later, the wolf came back from the promised feast. He found the dog in his master's yard and asked him to come out and be eaten. "Sir," said the dog with a grin, "I shall be delighted to have you eat me. I'll be out as soon as the porter opens the door." But the porter was a huge dog, whom the wolf knew by painful experience to be very unkind towards wolves. So he decided not to wait and made off as fast as his legs could carry him. And that's it, the end. Again, we all miss you. We love you.
So if everybody wants to unmute themselves really fast, come back on. Let's do this at a gallery view here. All right. So we just want to say we love you, and everybody, you can give him your well wishes. Go for it, everybody. Go!
Get better soon.
Love you.
Good stuff. You're gonna get through this, bud. We love you. We all love you.
Noelle, where did you go? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Sorry.
There she is.
Gone completely. I love you, Patrick.
Probably eating dinner.
All right.
I think she's crying.
Everybody all together. Bye.
Bye.
Until next time, there's the crazy crew. Okay. Bye, Patrick.